What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, covering the St. Louis Battlehawks and XFL football. And today I'm joined by fellow spring football enthusiast, Prime Connor. And we're here to break down the news that the XFL and the USFL are announcing their intentions to merge for next season. So there were talks of this earlier this week and kind of into last week about the two leagues talking about merging. I know the consensus between me and you was that this was a good decision for both leagues to announce this merger, this partnership. I'll ask you for your initial thoughts on this in a second, but first I want to read this joint statement from the USFL and the XFL. So today, the USFL and the XFL announced their intention to merge. The league said in a joint release, subject to customary regulatory approvals, and if the transaction is consummated, the new league will establish best-in-class operations based on the most recent seasons of both leagues. The historic combination will anchor professional spring football with substantial capabilities and resources to ensure further growth and continue to enhance the development of the collective players, coaches, and staff that are coming together. More details regarding the new league will be announced at a later date. So, initial thoughts from me. Reading that statement, to me, that's a long-winded way of them saying that they're going to try to take elements from both leagues and make them into one and hopefully give us the best possible spring football league. I kind of feel like the USFL and the XFL were both viable spring football leagues, but it also felt like at the same time, if they continued to compete against each other for viewership, I know their seasons didn't occur at the exact same time, but still, I do think football fatigue plays into people not putting their energy into both leagues or putting their fandom into both leagues. And so now this way, instead of competing for that viewership, they can give spring football the best chance to survive by merging. There's so much to talk about as far as like what the league is going to be called, if they're going to keep the XFL name or try to come up with a new name, or if
That's already been
they'll
revealed.
just if they'll still kind of like keep both of them, but just basically combine the two leagues and have the teams play each other. But I mean, I'll just let you get your initial thoughts out there on this merger.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that follows spring football more heavily than I do, outside of people who literally cover it for a job. Like if something happens in the spring football world, I'm gonna know about it. And I can answer two of your questions right now. The people behind the USFL have already filed for the trademark for the NSFL, National Spring Football League. That's already been a trademark filed by them, and the presumption is that's what the new league is going to be called. And it's also been said there's been a lot of different things said, but the expectation is that all 16 teams, because there's eight XFL teams, there's eight USFL teams, all 16 teams will not be coming over to this merger league, and I think it's going to be pretty easy to figure out which teams are going to come over from each league, because what they said the number was between 12 and 14, I think. And so you look at it like this, where the fact that um, the USFL has stadium deals for four of their eight teams done, because they go through the USFL has infamously done the whole hub model, where for the first season everyone played out of Birmingham, and in the second season they played out of Birmingham, Detroit, Memphis, and Canton. So they already have stadium deals on lock with Detroit, Memphis, Canton, and Birmingham. I don't know how I forgot that one. I'm literally wearing the Birmingham hat. Um, but on the XFL side, they already have their stadium deals done, right? But
Yeah.
the issues were they have issues with Houston and they have issues with Vegas. Like we've talked ad nauseum on here about how much of a shit show the Vegas Vipers stadium situation was.
Well, and this kind of ties into that too, real quick, not to cut you off, but even though I'm cutting you
As
off,
you cut me
but
off, but
yeah. So this kind of ties into that because we were talking about potentially making a video on what they're going to do with the Vegas Vipers, and there was another team that I can't remember off the top of my head that they were talking about potentially
It
moving
was
for the next.
they're moving Houston because the Houston Cougars stadium is being worked
Yes,
on, but they're just moving them to Rice Stadium, which I was about to get
yes,
into that actually. Um,
yeah. I was just gonna throw in like this kind of all ties into that because now this kind of gives you an excuse to wash your hands of the Vegas Vipers, even though it sounds like they were going to do that anyway. But
the
continue.
talks at the time were that the Vipers were going to be moved to one of Portland, Arizona, or Nashville. And I feel like Portland is the obvious choice there because, with the Ducks and Beavs, there's a massive football market in Oregon that's just not tapped. The closest team is the Seahawks. But my prediction, and I mean, I know this shit pretty well. So like there are, um, I'm gonna say the XFL carries over Orlando, St. Louis, Seattle, DC, Arlington, and San Antonio. That's six. And I'm going to say that the USFL carries over Memphis, Michigan, Birmingham, um, shit.
See,
Michigan,
you're better
Memphis,
with the
Birmingham.
USFL teams than I am, so you probably
I
know
have them
best who they're
pulled
going
up.
to carry
See,
over.
I have all the teams here, but I just forget. Houston is the other one that I was going to say. I think Houston's an interesting one here, um, because the USFL has deals done with Birmingham and Memphis, or Birmingham, Memphis, and Michigan. All like their stadiums are set. Uh, I think it's not Legion Field; it's the new UAB stadium, the Liberty Bowl, the Hall of Fame stadium, which the USFL has already said that they're going to try and brand one of the teams to be Canton. So I'm expecting a new team to be called like Canton something or other. Like let's just say the Canton Gold because the USFL already has the trademark for the Denver Gold. So if you just have it be the Canton Gold, um, that's a pretty easy solution. But I think Houston is an interesting one here. What I predict is going to happen is, do you remember like the whole issue with the Roughnecks branding?
I remember there was an issue with it, but you have to remind me what it actually was.
The Titans filed a cease and desist on the Roughnecks because they said the Roughnecks branding was too close to the Oilers, which accurate.
Yeah,
Um, but I think you kind of kill two birds with one stone here, where both teams have a Houston team. You're not going to have two teams playing in Houston, and the XFL was already close to a stadium deal with Rice Stadium, and the USFL has a Houston team branding that has historical value in Houston because I'm not sure where the Oilers relocation lined up with the Gamblers moving. I don't know if the Gamblers shared Houston with the Oilers or if the Gamblers were there between the Oilers leaving. I think they shared it with the Oilers, but still, the Gamblers were a popular team in the original USFL. So um, you basically just give the Gamblers the Roughnecks Stadium deal and just wash your hands of the lawsuit with the Titans entirely there, and then you can just
yeah.
so that would leave the Roughnecks, the Vipers, the Philly Stars, the Pittsburgh Maulers, the New Orleans Breakers, and the New Jersey Generals kind of shit out of luck. One of those teams would be rebranded to Canton, but I mean, all those teams still have players under contract. So what I would assume that they do is have a contraction draft where like all the players from those teams are put in a pool and then they just draft from there. That's just how I would do it, at least. You could do something like that where, because both leagues are like losing two teams, right? So just take the Roughnecks and Vipers and have the remaining XFL teams draft from that, and then take the, let's say, Maulers and Breakers, and say the Stars move to Canton, and then you contract the Maulers and Breakers, and just have the remaining USFL teams pull from that. And so now you have a 12-team league with six teams from either league coming together. And there was a lot of people want to see like this league be divided into two conferences, the XFC and the USFC, taking model from the AFC and NFC, which I would like to see, but I pointed out on Twitter that that might not be the best option because in a league like this, you have to save as much money as possible. So honestly, you should probably just divide teams by region just to make travel easier and save a couple bucks there and maybe go into the XFC USFC model in the future.
Yeah. Well, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle this financially because I know the XFL had said originally when they booted back up with The Rock and Redbird Capital and everyone involved in that they had the money to go for what was it, 3 seasons. Adding the USFL in, you know the USFL better than me, so I don't know what their finances looked like, and how long it looked like they were going to be able to continue doing this. So I'm still with you though. With that being said, that they should try to make this league as cost effective as possible, and just you don't need to do conferences. Honestly, I think 14 teams is a good number if that's what they end up doing. I don't think it's enough to have conferences like true conferences. I think
I mean, they have
you
conferences
should.
with 8 teams. Like,
Yeah, but like we like in the XFL, like you had your two divisions. And the problem with that was when you only have 8 teams and you're trying to do divisions like that, you have teams like St. Louis who get screwed out of a playoff spot when they really should have been in the postseason.
which is like, yeah, I feel like they definitely need to learn from that instance in particular. Just with the facts that, um, yeah, you need to have your best teams in the playoffs. Like the fucking like 4-6 Dallas Renegades won the championship, which is like,
Yeah.
the Birmingham
That's a
Stallions would have
joke.
housed them. Like that's a joke. Like the Birmingham Stallions are like back-to-back USFL champions, and I don't feel like the Renegades championship should be recognized. But still, I feel like a league with Orlando, Memphis, St. Louis, and San Antonio, those four markets are going to be huge in this league. And then you like Canton, the attendance in Canton was pretty bad, but that's because like Canton is a non-football market that didn't have a team
Yeah.
marketed towards them. And I think the USFL realized that was a stupid decision. So if you brand like the Philadelphia Stars to like the Canton Gold or something like that, suddenly it's a small market, but it's still a non-NFL market that you're tapping into with a football hungry populace. They have the Hall of Fame game there every year, and
Yeah.
Cleveland's not that far away. So you have like a decent set of stadiums there. And honestly, like I would like it if they mixed it up a little more. Like, yeah, they already have the stadium deals in place, but I think they should use this as an opportunity to like completely mix things up. Like, let's say we forget DC and add Portland or something like that, and just
Yeah.
use this as an opportunity to just correct all mistakes by both leagues. Something I was going to go into that I don't think you're aware of is there's like talks of who's going to be in charge of it. And it's already, do you know who Daryl Johnston is?
Yeah, I was gonna bring so I have these couple bios in front of me about both leagues, and I know Daryl Johnson. He's the former, or not former. He's an analyst on Fox, and he's their president of football operations for the league.
Well, yeah, everything's just talks right now. There's very little that's like concrete other than like Danny Garcia tweeting out something big's coming and then all 16 teams in both leagues issuing a statement saying they're going to merge, right?
Yeah,
Also, something I'd like to point out, the Tampa Bay Bandits were shelved when the Fighting Todd Haleys were moved from Tampa to Memphis. So what they could do with the contracted teams is shelve the branding with the intention of bringing them back in the future. That's could just be the way that they handle it, considering the USFL has already done that. And a market could come out of nowhere because the USFL had also said they're exploring other markets, and the XFL already was with Portland. But I'm rambling. What I'm getting to is it's been said that I should probably go over who runs each league, right? The
yeah,
USFL is a Fox Sports entity, and they're
yeah,
ran by Daryl Johnston. and Daryl Johnston is going to be the owner or going to be the commissioner of the joint National Spring Football League. Like that's already been a thing, and the USFL players are stoked about that. Um, I think there were a lot of players that stayed in the USFL over going to the XFL just because some about like I don't know what Daryl Johnston did exactly, but all the players like Scooby Wright in particular I've seen has been like pounding the table for Daryl Johnston, and like all the players seem to love him. So, and in a league like this, you want the players to want to play, because you can't pay them, so you want players to want to play.
I was gonna say it definitely seems like the USFL they know how to market the hell out of their league, even though they don't have the money backing it like the XFL does, like Danny Garcia, Dwayne Johnson, and Redbird Capital did. It seems like they had the money, but
Just
they
kind of
didn't really.
curious. I was gonna get to Danny Garcia and Redbird Capital here in a second because when it was first announced, it seemed like, okay, what it's going to be is like Fox Sports doesn't want the burden of carrying a league on their own, and Redbird Capital just wants to maximize their investment. And it was going to be half Fox Sports, half Redbird Capital.
Mhm.
Like the NFL is owned by 32 individuals. So, like, that's not really a foreign concept. Most sports teams are owned individually.
Yeah.
But what's kind of interesting is I don't know like I'm not tech savvy enough to understand what they meant. But I was read an XFL analyst post on Instagram. That's like the number one Instagram for any XFL news. But there were a couple XFL assistant coaches that stepped down, like June Jones, and there's like something to do with the XFL email accounts where it's like my understanding is like if you sent an email to June Jones, like it came back and said like that email doesn't exist or something, and then later you found out, oh, June Jones stepped down. But the same
Yeah.
thing that has been happening to June Jones and the other assistants that left, it happened to Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson's email.
Hmm.
So there's a theory that they're stepping away, but Danny and Dwayne have both been like hyping up the merger. So what my working theory is that like um because in a merger you want the best of both leagues, right?
Yeah.
And the XFL is flashier, but the USFL has more substance. I think you could probably agree with that. Uh,
Yeah. For sure.
so now instead of Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia running it, you have a female CEO and potentially I don't know enough about WWE, but I guess that The Rock is probably the biggest name in wrestling history. At
I
least,
wouldn't say he's up there, but yeah, I get your point.
yeah, or one of the biggest names in wrestling history. He's hyped as a big actor, even though he's never really had a good movie. Um, but anyway, massive celebrity presence and female CEO. But then you have the president of Daryl Johnston, who's actually running shit and he knows what he's doing. So,
Yeah.
like the owners, and I'm sure Redbird Capital and Fox Sports will still be involved in making their money. Another thing I wanted to point out is the TV war. This is going to be good for league exposure. Uh,
Yeah. So I really wanted to throw in a comment on this. So I think it's great. But what I love about this merger is that the main problem with the USFL was that they had the product was decent. They had the TV stuff down. I mean, they had good exposure. I can read it right here. They were the first nationally televised spring league in almost 40 years. They were on Fox Sports. They had games on NBC Sports. It seems like they were really good at marketing the league. The XFL, on the other hand, I feel like it wasn't marketed as well, but the football was better. They had the stadiums to play in. The USFL, they were playing in like one stadium in their first season in Birmingham. I know they got a few more. The Liberty Bowl, they started playing in that in their second season, all that stuff. So it's like now this kind of solves the issue of like the USFL not having the actual stadiums to play in. The XFL solves that, but then this is great for the XFL too in this merger because you even complained during the season when we were trying to watch the Battlehawks that they had games on like ESPNU and like
it's on
these
ESPN
off
Plus. Like,
or yeah, yeah, or like ESPN Plus, and then like these offhand like subscription services where you had to like you know subscribe to watch their games. Whereas the USFL, they were getting on national television. So that's what I really like about this merger is you kill the problem with the stadiums for the USFL, and then you have better TV exposure, assuming Daryl Johnston is still heavily involved in running this league.
Yeah, I've talked about this before on here, I'm pretty sure, because it's like they both they're one league is good at what the other league fails at. You know, I feel like, and another thing that I think is interesting is you were talking earlier about how both leagues like are while not running at the same time, they're still competing for viewership to an extent.
Yeah.
I've noticed like this weird like beef between USFL and XFL Twitter, which like there's a lot of people like me who like I was at the first Stallions playoff game and I was at a Battlehawks game last year. Like I took road trips for these motherfuckers. And like I wonder how many people are like me and have been to both. But there's a lot of people that just like like a lot of old heads like lean towards the USFL, and a lot of like young people like lean towards the XFL, which makes sense because the original XFL was like the edgy thing in 2001, and the USFL was the more prestigious brand from the 80s. So the people who remember the USFL stick with the USFL. The people who grew up with the XFL lean towards the XFL. But now you have both. And so now everyone's under one spring football umbrella, right? And another thing that I want to point out is like, so you have, I'm assuming the Redbird Capital investment is going to be the same. The Fox Sports TV deal and investment is going to be the same. I'm assuming Garcia and The Rock aren't going to pull out their money. Um, so like
Yeah.
you were saying, like 3 years for the XFL was the game plan, right? I think it was the same figure for the USFL. Maybe I'm just making it up because the AAF was supposed to be 3 years and the XFL was also supposed to be 3 years. But so let's just, you know, say now you have 6 years worth of, or 5 more additional years of funding because they've already both played a season. Let's just call it 5 extra years or 4, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Basically, you extended your life guaranteed more than the 2 remaining years that you had, you know? So I think, like, I talk about the AAF all the time. The AAF is my baby. I love the AAF. I miss it so much. It was the best out of all these leagues. But the AAF's plan before they got shut down midseason was they're going to run 3 years and then just throw themselves at the NFL like a desperate X and just be like, hey, you want us to be the official minor league and just see what happened. And, you know, obviously they didn't last, but I feel like if the USFL TV deal gets this merged league on national television and it keeps going, if this lasts a few years, have you seen how many players signed from these leagues onto NFL squads? Yeah, there was like 30 players from each league. Like the fucking Cowboys' entire special teams unit, Cavante Turpin, the returner, and Brandon Aubrey are both USFL veterans. Didn't go to the NFL after college. Like they both, Brandon Aubrey didn't even play college football, and Cavante Turpin didn't get a shot in the NFL, won USFL MVP, and now he's the star kick returner. Wasn't he like all pro kick return or something for the Cowboys?
Yeah,
Um,
he was
something
one
like
of the better returners.
and he was the best returner last year. And Brandon Aubrey's been killing it as a kicker. And Bill Belichick said that the USFL and XFL guys had an advantage coming into training camp because they were already in football shape because, you know, they just played a season. There's a little bit of a break from the end of the USFL season to the beginning of the NFL training camp, but the fact is the guys had a leg up. Another guy that comes to mind is Alex Magoo, is on the Packers practice squad. AJ McCarron, our boy, just signed with the Bengals practice squad. You know,
Yep.
like it's
Burton
working.
Tom is still bouncing around the NFL.
Yeah, these players are getting jobs. So, and like Ron Rivera, Bill Belichick, and a couple other coaches have come out and been like, yeah, we like these leagues. These leagues are good for the league. So I feel like what we're moving to, like what the game plan should be is like prove that you can float on your own, and then pitch a G League style environment to the NFL and get the NFL's backing. And there's a lot that you could pitch it on for the NFL, exploring potential future expansion markets, developing players like Brandon Aubrey and Kavontae Turpin, and just various things like that. I think that you can pitch this towards the NFL. I know I'm rambling and you haven't gotten much in, but one
It's all
thing that
good.
I would like to throw out there is I want this merger to go further, and I want to incorporate the CFL because I remember there were conversations between the XFL and the
Mhm.
CFL a couple years ago, but the CFL has really turned it around recently. Like they were on the brink of like bankruptcy not long ago, and I've been looking at their attendance numbers, and their attendance numbers kicked the ass of like every XFL team not named St. Louis last year. They're consistently getting like 20,000 people, and then like Saskatchewan has like 35,000. So like there's more Saskatchewan Roughriders fans than Chargers fans. So I think that like so let's say you take the 12 teams that I listed out from this merger, which I think my assessment of the merger teams is pretty sound, and then you throw in the 9 CFL teams, maybe you drop one of them and have it be just 8 teams. Suddenly you have a 21 team minor league, international minor league at that for
Yeah. Logistically, it would have been difficult, and I feel like maybe that's why the XFL, when they talked to him a couple years, got cold feet just because of like having to travel to Canada potentially for games. But having,
also COVID still a concern.
yeah, COVID too, but having international teams in a spring football league, I think is awesome.
Yeah. And it's the NFL wants to do international anyway because they're doing like the bullshit with London, and then like the Chiefs have a Germany game this year, which I'm all for the Germany games. Stop going to London. But I feel like the NFL having like an international um minor league, which it's like the CFL would have to change a lot, but I know in Canada the high schools play NFL rules. The only people that play the Canadian football rules are like the CFL themselves. Every other level of football in Canada plays NFL rules. So like just get rid of your stupid ass long end zones and get a fourth down, and or you know what, you could do an AL NL type thing, which you know how for years like NL
Yeah,
teams didn't have the DH, and screw it. If the game's in Canada, there's no fourth down. If the game's in the US, there's a fourth down. Do it like the designated hitter. Screw it. Why not? But I just think
yeah,
merging the leagues and getting all the fan bases together is worth it. Like Chad Kelly is a superstar in Canada right now for the Toronto Argonauts. You remember Swag Kelly, right?
yeah.
And like James Franklin was the Argonauts quarterback for a long time. You know him.
Oh, Taylor
I
Powell
think
plays in the
Brad.
CFL, former Mizzou quarterback.
He does? I didn't know that. I know Brad
Yep.
Smith played there for a bit. Matty Mock was a backup to Vince Young. Like, I don't know. There's a market for this, and I feel like
Yeah.
people
There. Well, so when you look at it from like the purpose perspective of having spring football, there is no argument. Spring football is great for player development, for getting players to the NFL, giving fringe guys a job, playing professional football. Like it's great for all those reasons. The debate has always been: is there a market for it? Do people want to watch this? And I think they do. I think there's enough people that want to watch. I just think the main issue that spring football has had in the past is that
incompetent
they have,
ownership.
yeah, right, and just the lack of finances and bad leadership, all those things. It seemed like XFL 2020 had a really good chance to finally be the spring league to survive, and then of course COVID happened. They shut down for a couple of years, and then they returned. And we think they have a really good chance again. And now this merger with the USFL makes it even more likely. Yes, sometimes with these spring leagues, you'll see the viewership is very well off in the first few games, and then the novelty kind of wears off, and then people will stop watching. But after the um, even after the kind of fair weather fans, I guess I'll call them for lack of a better term, even after they stop watching, these games typically get somewhere around 1 million viewers, which I think is
Beat the
fine
NBA
for a spring
consistently.
football league. Yeah, yeah, and then it's I think one of the problems too with the spring football and why people don't. I feel like people they throw out this old, cop out answer of why they don't watch spring football. Oh, it's terrible. It's a terrible product. One, when you say that, you're telling me you don't actually watch the games because we had a lot of fun games last year. Um, Secondly, what I take from that when people say that that the product sucks, it's like, you know, you watch all these like most people that watch XFL or USFL probably also watch college football. And college football, every single year, there are horrible games. There are blowouts against FCS teams. There's uh, Big Ten football. If you watch Big Ten football, like you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like that stuff can get pretty boring. You're telling me you watch that, but you won't watch spring football. It's because it's just because it's spring football. Like I feel like if these leagues were able to become sustainable and they hang around for a long time, you'll find people starting to attach themselves to the league. Like the main problem too with a lot of these teams is like they're sticking these teams in cities that don't care for them. But on top of that,
Ham.
they're new teams, and so people don't have this deep emotional connection to them because it's not like they grew up being a St. Louis Battlehawks fan. They didn't grow up being a
That's where the
Houston
USFL comes
Roughnecks
in.
fan.
There's people that actually grew up rooting for these teams.
Yeah, and I was gonna get to that too. Is like that's a benefit from having this merger. Is there are people that now have for a while been fans of these teams and they're invested. You know, they're in too deep. They're not getting out now. But that was a problem with
You with the
spring football in the
battlehawks.
past. Yeah, that was a problem with spring football in the past. Though, is just people didn't have that deep emotional connection to these teams. But if you can hang around for 5 or 6 years, I think you'll start to see a lot of people develop a true fandom for these teams, and that'll help spring football in the long run.
Well, like I didn't go to Birmingham. I wish I went to Birmingham for my USFL experience, but just like watching the crowd at Birmingham, people are nuts. You know, people went
Mhm.
nuts for the Birmingham Stallions. I remember seeing a guy that had pole, a flagpole with like the Birmingham Stallions, the Birmingham Iron, the Birmingham Barracudas, and like any pro football team that has ever been in Birmingham was on this flagpole. Like they want a pro team, like NFL or otherwise, in Birmingham. And you know, like we've documented the Battlehawks passion here, like the whole fuck Cronky movement. Like that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And you know the Brahmas were really handled poorly last year, but I think there's a lot of potential with the San Antonio market. Memphis. Memphis like only sold one half of their bowl, which was really odd. And tickets were super expensive and there was a high demand, but that half of the stadium was sold out. And a lot of like Memphinites were pissed because like I don't know. I talked to some people from Memphis who said like, yeah, we could have sold out the stadium. They just didn't open it. You know, so it's like I think Memphis is a like really good market here. When I was in Canton, there were people behind me just screaming like every play, "Oh yeah, we love football!" Like there's football fans in Canton, Ohio that maybe they don't want to drive out to Cleveland, maybe they don't want to pay NFL ticket prices. That will just come out and watch a Canton Gold game or whoever the team there is. And I don't know, the Battlehawks and Stallions are definitely the two because they like we I'm not going to sit here and talk and give another speech about the Battlehawks culture in St. Louis because
Mhm.
I've done that every time we've done one of these. But the Stallions have the same impact on the Birmingham culture that St. Louis has. I mean, not the same level of spite because Birmingham never lost an NFL team, but still the same level of passion is there. And God, I just pray that the first National Spring Football League championship is between the Stallions and the Battlehawks.
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
awesome.
there's a couple things that I'm curious about as pertains to this merger. One, the Battlehawks were scheduled to host the XFL championship next year, and I wonder if that's still going to happen because the USFL championships were always in Canton, and I feel like just logistically, it makes more sense to have the championship in St. Louis than Canton. And if it was already scheduled, might as well just follow through.
I also
And
feel like if you want the biggest crowd drawn to the game, you need to have it in St. Louis.
yeah, and One thing one little bit of verbiage I wanted to point out was that the USFL said, like at the end of their statement, said something along the lines of, "We are fully committed to like USFL season 3 or something like that," and they referred to this upcoming season as USFL season 3, and I think that's interesting verbiage because like, okay, are we going to have an XFL and USFL season and then merge next year? Or are we gonna get
Mhm.
it done this year? And I was gonna ask you like, because you talk about football fatigue on every fucking battlehawks episode, um, but do you like the USFL or XFL start time better with the February versus April start time?
I think I like the XFL start time because I feel like, you have your wind down from the NFL season and then the Super Bowl, and then it's like the XFL is immediately after. But it's like I'm still kind of in that football watching mode, if you get what I'm saying. So it's like I can just kind of watch the XFL pretty seamlessly, or I can transition into watching that pretty seamlessly. Whereas like I definitely get to a point in the NFL off season where I'm just kind of enjoying my break from stressing about football. And I feel like with the USFL start time, I'm less likely to watch because at that time I've already winded down from watching football. And so it's like it's too late. You caught me at the wrong time. Like, I'm training camp is soon for the NFL, and like I'm already gonna have to get back to covering that and watching those games. And so like I'm just not that interested. I feel like if you catch me right after the NFL season, I'm more likely to watch your football games. I don't know how you feel about that.
I definitely agree with your sentiment. Um, I From what I've heard, they're looking at a merged April start date, which logistically just makes sense for year one because that gives them 2 extra months to get everything straightened out. But I would hope that like in the future they would move it up. There's one thing I do really like about the USFL's start date though, is I don't think the championship was it on this year, but I remember when the Birmingham Stallions won this championship, they did it on the 4th of July. And I just really thought the idea of a football championship game being played on the 4th of July, the most American sport being played on the most American day, like I just really liked that. And if you could schedule your championship for the 4th of July, that's a really good day to have it. But honestly, I feel like the best this is gonna sound kind of weird, but I feel like the best day to have the XFL, or I called it the XFL, the National Spring Football League kickoff. This is kind of unconventional, but what if you have it the week before the Super Bowl? Because like because you have college NFL all season, and then January college wraps up like early mid January, um, and then you have NFL playoffs through the conference championship, and then you have that week break, and they have the Super Bowl media days and everything, but I don't know if people would be completely opposed to watching some football like the weekend before because people are still in that football watching mode, but there's just no football that week. So while people are still in that football watching mode before the Super Bowl, they can watch some spring football and then watch the Super Bowl next week. Now, I don't know if you'd want to don't play any games on Super Bowl Sunday. That'd be
Right.
suicide. Even if it was like at noon, still don't play it on Super Bowl Sunday. Because people
I
like watch.
honestly, I mean, I agree with don't playing football on Super Bowl Sunday, but then you mentioning that it's like hell. I'm sure people would enjoy tailgating for the Super Bowl by just watching an XFL game. I mean, that might
That's
not be the
fair.
worst idea.
Yeah, but I think you could get away with maybe you could have like one like game at noon on the Super Bowl day, and people like start their parties early and just have the game on in the
Yeah.
background. And then like that Saturday, you could probably get away with some games too. Um, but like you talk about football fatigue, and it's like after the Super Bowl, that's a very like finite area. But if you're already invested from the week prior, like so like maybe you have a bye week after week one or something stupid like that. But like if you get people invested the week before the Super Bowl, they want to see what happens week two. It's kind of like watching episode one of a new TV show, and it's like, I want because like we as sports fans are as invested in the characters as we are the actual game, right?
Yeah.
So get people invested in the characters the week before the Super Bowl, and then they'll want to continue watching after the Super Bowl. Which, maybe that's a ballsy move, but I like it. And the April start date, I really don't want to be worrying about spring football during the NFL draft because, yeah, you can have it like the Sunday after the draft.
Yeah, like that's
Uh,
my thing. Like that's my main issue with like the USFL is like when you start that late in the spring, it's like I'm then by then like I need my break at some point from watching football, you know? Like I don't want it to be a year-round thing. And then like I'm a fan of other sports like the NBA, and it's like, you're kind of interrupting that when you have your league starting that late in the spring. And then whenever the NFL has the draft and free agency and stuff, like I'm fully invested in that. And then it's like you're catching me at the wrong time. So, but I like your idea about kind of maybe starting the week before the Super Bowl. I feel like that wouldn't be terrible.
my concern with that is less like from a viewership perspective and more from a player perspective because like this entire league is built on bringing football to. I mean, I say that, but like if I were running the league, I'd build the league on the idea of bringing football to those who don't have football and giving guys another opportunity. And I just feel like the XFL end date gives players a better opportunity for the NFL than the USFL start date because you go right from the USFL season to an NFL training camp. And maybe
Yeah,
you're in better shape and that gives you a better shot. But like, come on, these guys gotta have a breather at some point.
yeah,
Um,
because they're doing
but
everything possible. Like, or they got to work their ass off just to make the team, and they just played a season in the spring before that. And then also, if they make the team, then they got to bust their ass to actually be active on game day and play in the games, and then play a full NFL season.
Yeah, that'd be rough. So I like the February start date just from that perspective. Also, other than college basketball, there's not really anything else going on in March. So
Yeah, for sure. So there's so much stuff that could be broken down. We'll go over a couple more things and then we'll wrap this up, and then we'll be sure to have more content in the future, especially as more developments come out about this merger.
shit, I
But
might
I
actually
really
upload about this.
yeah, I really hope though that they're able to get the best possible cities for these teams, the ones that are kind of in doubt right now. It's Battlehawks are a no-brainer, Stallions are a no-brainer. There's some other ones that kind of feel like they're
Showboats,
on the
Brahmas. I would
yeah,
still throw the Guardians in there.
yeah, maybe probably DC and Seattle I feel like are pretty safe
They
bets.
didn't do very well last year.
I, DC I still have hope for. Same with Seattle. Seattle was really good in XFL 2020. They were right behind St. Louis in attendance, and I feel like they're kind of deprived of pro sports in Seattle just a little bit. So I still have hope for them. But anyway, what we're really
There's
trying
three
to do is
teams.
we're trying to get rid of Vegas. That's the main thing. We're trying to get rid of Vegas. We're trying to get Orlando might be another. I feel like. Do you think Orlando
Okay,
should
okay.
still have their team?
Here's what I'm gonna do for like in advocacy of Orlando. They did great in the AAF because the Orlando Apollos were good, and I mean the Guardians were fucking pathetic. Like they were horrific. And also,
Yeah,
uh Orlando did the same shit that Memphis did, where only half of the bowl was full. And keep in mind, this is like March in Orlando. And for whatever fucking reason, the bowl half that they decided to put or to sell tickets in was the half that was going to be in the sun. So like if you
and that
bought tickets
wasn't
to a
shown on
Guardians game,
TV.
yeah, it was the half that wasn't shown on TV and it was the half that was in the sun. So if you bought tickets, you were sitting in 90-degree heat in the sun and watching a terrible football team. I don't blame people for not going. Like, let folks sit in the shade. Like, come on, people. And I also like the stadium because that stadium is not used for anything else. So I've talked about it
XFL
before. You have the
exclusive.
yeah, you have that's two spring exclusive venues. I mean, I guess like the Liberty Bowl, Alamo Dome, and I forget what our it's Protective Stadium. Birmingham is Protective Stadium. Those don't have pro teams, but they have college teams. So
Yeah, I know before we've talked about having teams in San Diego and Oakland, some of these other teams that had their NFL teams taken away, or, just kind of spite football. I hope that they're able to find it seems like the USFL still wants to have a lot of their cities, and the XFL still wants to have a lot of theirs. I feel like Daryl Johnston is going to try to implement as much as possible that he wants, while kind of it feels like he wants to take advantage of the finances that this merger is going to give him, but he still wants to provide his vision that he has for spring football in the USFL. You talk about The Rock and Danny Garcia earlier, and how this might be they might kind of be stepping away from like the day-to-day operations thing, but their money's going to be in this, and I agree with that. I feel like with them, they seem like the types that when they bought the XFL, they thought it was a really good idea, and they get into it, and then they, don't realize how much work it's going to be, or they maybe kind of regret their investment. I'm not saying they regret their investment, but I could definitely see them getting cold feet or just leaving this all to Daryl Johnston, because it seems like he knows what he's doing a lot more. It feels like The Rock maybe is just the type of guy that he likes spring football. He wants it to work. He has a vision for this too, but he's just going to kind of be a hype man for the league, really, instead of a day to day operations kind of guy.
Right, I feel like we're wrapping it up here, so I'm gonna like submit my final prediction for the teams that are gonna be in this. So, I feel like the number I was told was, or I've seen. I mean, nobody tells me shit. The number I've seen is 12. So we're gonna
XFL or
safely
spring
assume.
football insider, Connor. You're a spring
I
football
mean,
insider. You've been told.
Dude, with how much I love this shit, I'm going to work for this league someday because I just obsess over this and no one else really cares. So I'm going to work for this league someday. I'm manifesting that. I think I might rather work for this league than the NFL, which, anybody who's relying on my finances might have a problem with that. But, my hypothetical kid can starve. We're working in spring football, baby. Dad's winning the XFL title. But look, my prediction, um, again, submitting this now, clip this, we'll see how I do. I might clip this and put it on my YouTube channel to see how well I do. But my prediction, 6 teams from each leagues, the Arlington Renegades, which fuck their new design. San Antonio Brahmas, DC Defenders, Seattle Dragons, St. Louis Battlehawks, Orlando Guardians. There's your 6 from um, the XFL. From the USFL, um, the Birmingham Stallions, the Michigan Panthers, the Memphis Showboats, and the Houston Gamblers. Um, which the Houston Gamblers, I'm going to say, take the Roughnecks Stadium deal, basically. And then Canton gets a team. I think Canton gets a team, and I'm going to call them the Canton Gold. I don't know what they're actually going to be called. But how many teams does that leave us with, Josh?
I'm sorry. What are you asking?
How many teams have I counted? I've counted 11, right?
Right.
And all 11 teams that I've listed already have stadium deals in place. So the league has 11 stadiums set to go. So that leaves a wild card. Um, I don't expect, um, well, Vegas isn't going to come back. We know that. And
Right.
I already gave the Roughnecks TV deal or the Roughnecks stadium deal at Rice Stadium to the Houston Gamblers. So that leaves the New Jersey Generals, the Philadelphia Stars, and the Pittsburgh Maulers and the New Orleans Breakers. Sorry. Which one of those teams gets a stadium hub? Who knows? The USFL has talked about adding another market, and the we've already said the XFL has explored um, Nashville, and Arizona. Sorry. So for my 12th team, it's pretty much a wild card. I'm going to say Portland is the new. I'm going to say that the Philadelphia Stars become um, the Canton Gold. The New Orleans Breakers become um, the Portland. Or oh, I'm fucking stupid. The New Orleans Breakers played in Portland in the 80s. So yeah, that's my final team. The New Orleans Breakers go to Portland because that was a USFL team back in the day. So there you go. There's my fucking prediction as I thought out loud and made that not very articulate at all. But yeah. One last time. Portland Breakers, Memphis Showboats, Houston Gamblers, Birmingham Stallions, Michigan Panthers, Dallas Renegades, San Antonio Brahmas, Seattle Dragons, DC Defenders, St. Louis Battlehawks, Orlando Guardians. There's my prediction.
Yeah,
That was
I
very
agree.
incoherent.
It's all good. I mean, we still got from point A to point B, right? We took a detour or scenic route, right?
I was thinking out
But
loud. I
so
made a
I agree
video on
with
the Portland Breakers. How did I forget that?
well, I agree with the teams. I think Portland would be a good wild card team per se. Um, they definitely feel like a market that would thrive in spring football or spring football would thrive in that market, I guess I should say. Arizona seems kind of lame to me. I feel like that's just kind of like here's another big market we could put a team in.
Arizona sucks as a sports market. Like
I feel like they're
what Arizona
overrated.
sports team gets support? The Suns? I remember the Suns were talked about were like in relocation rumors not long ago. The Cardinals don't have fans. Like, why would you go to Arizona?
I just yeah, I don't like that one. And then what
Nashville.
Nashville feels just a tad bit redundant if you're going to have the Memphis Showboats be a part of the league still.
I,
Um,
re- I disagree with that because there would be a massive rivalry because Memphis hates Nashville. It's kind of like St. Louis, Kansas City. It'd be like saying St. Louis and Kansas City
but
was
would that
redundant and St.
still
Louis hates Kansas
translate to
City.
spring football, though, is my question.
Yes, because they're like, what does Memphis have? The Grizzlies. Nashville has the Titans and Predators. There's no league where Nashville and Memphis can play each other unless they're in like some soccer league, I think. I don't
Yeah,
know
that
if they
makes
are. I don't
sense.
know shit about soccer. But that would be the only place where Memphis could beat Nashville. Um, Let me
Yeah,
look
that
at
makes
like
sense.
um Anna, I just looked up like USFL relocation and I haven't seen any articles, but I'm sure I could figure that out on Twitter because they really don't write articles about this.
Yeah,
Th Never mind. There was Nashville, Tempe. Tempe is the specific city for the Vegas Vipers relocation, which fuck that. Just put the
yeah.
Breakers there because there's already a history with Portland. That's perfect because that's six teams from each league adds the Canton and Portland market. I don't know. Daryl Johnston needs to make me commissioner. I've been saying this that I'm the guy that can make spring football work if you give me the money. I've studied this shit since 2019 religiously. Well, no, before 2019, probably since like 2017.
Yeah, well, maybe he's watching this video and maybe he can give you a call.
Well, we
Yeah.
know Donnie Hagman is.
Yeah, we know Donnie Hagman is. He
Fuck
listens to
you,
us
Donnie
because
Hagman. You suck. Let's hope
but
Donnie Hagman doesn't make the cut in the merger.
I don't know, man. Yeah, that was rough watching him.
Let's hope
But
Bex doesn't either.
yeah, Beck is too busy watching his son play quarterback at Iowa State.
God, I don't know what like year Rocco. His name's like Rocco Becht, right? I think that's his name. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what year Bex Jr. is, but I know like if he's a senior, he's going to be the Battlehawks quarterback next year, and I just don't want that.
Yeah,
I'll
I
be a
didn't even
full-time
think about
Stallions
that.
fan.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Yeah, he would be. Hmm.
Which, like, I'm a massive Stallions fan and a Battlehawks fan, so I don't know what team I'd have to pick.
Maybe
Um,
Anthony Becht can get left behind in this merger.
yeah, that'd be sweet. I mean, my boy Skip Holtz, back-to-back champion, so.
Yeah, a coaching search would be fun. An XFL coaching search. We really haven't gotten to
Dude,
experience that yet.
let's do XFL flight trackers.
That's insane. That
Dude,
would
let's
be
put together a
insane.
board. Like John Gruden,
Gary Pinkel.
Jay Gruden, Jeff Fisher,
Oh
um,
God.
Bill Snyder.
That's a good way to go from 30,000 fans to 3,000 fans if you hire Jeff Fisher to coach the St. Louis Battlehawks.
Michigan Panthers legend Jeff Fisher.
But we'll go ahead and
Dick
wrap it up
Vermeil's
there.
still alive.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he'd want to coach XFL football at this age, but I mean,
Bill Cowher.
we'll wrap it up there. There will be a lot more coming from this. I'll be interested to see all the different ideas and stuff that are combined with these two leagues. How many of the rules from the XFL that they keep, if the officiating will be more like what the XFL has, or if it'll be more like the USFL has. We'll be sure to talk about it all. But for those of you that are still watching, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more people can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com for more. And then, Connor, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, follow me on YouTube, Prime Connor. I've made both XFL and USFL content. I really need to make a video on this, shouldn't I? I don't know. I've probably missed the boat for the announcement. I'll just make it like when, shit actually happens. But follow me on Twitter, Brady Reeks. I tweet schizophrenically a lot and I need more interactions. Yeah, that's about it. And follow me on
Yeah,
Reddit.
but you can go check out his
Follow
spring
my
football
Reddit account.
content. Yeah, go do that. You can also check out his spring football content on his Prime Connor YouTube channel. Usually his videos are pretty good for all that stuff, and he's way more in depth than I am on any of that stuff. So go and check that out. But with all that being said, we'll see you all in the next one. Take
Kiwi
care.
football on FS1, baby.